Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com, here with your Hurricane Outlook and discussion for the 16th of September. Happy Friday to you. Let's take a look at what's happening. The map is pretty busy today. The leftovers of Ian way up here in the North Atlantic. Tropical storm Julia still milling around. I like the word loitering. That works pretty well too. Definitely loitering in the waters off the Carolina coast. Tropical disturbance headed towards the Texas coast without much fanfare in that area. No real worry for development. And then we have Karl, which a lot of people will be talking about probably. And then another area trying to come off the coast of Africa has a 50% chance of development down the road. So things are indeed busy as we are in the peak time of the hurricane season. Even if what we have out here is kind of anemic, is a good way to put it, sort of weak and disheveled, sheared, it's still busy nonetheless. You can see Julia here spinning around off the Carolina coast and the strong upper level winds blowing the thunderstorm tops away. In fact, the winds are coming through here at almost 50 knots in some cases. I'll show you that in just a moment. Here's the disturbance moving towards the Texas coast. Very warm water over here, so any instability in the atmosphere is going to lead to a pretty good burst of showers and thunderstorms, but this isn't organizing into a tropical system, just kind of a weak area of elongated low pressure, and that will bring some gusty winds and a period of showers and thunderstorms to parts of southwest Louisiana and the upper Texas coast. And then we have Karl, which also being sheared, strong upper level winds, but boy, this is a huge area of energy and a very vigorous low level circulation. Definitely has the makings to become a significant hurricane if it can overcome these obstacles. There's some fairly dry air in the mid-levels of the atmosphere around this region, and the upper-level winds need to relax. The European model, very bullish on this developing into a solid hurricane, especially once it gets over into this region, and then it tries to take it on out to sea, maybe near Bermuda. We'll have to wait and see. I'll talk about that more in just a moment. But you're kind of setting the stage here. So from a vorticity perspective, this is how I like to look at the health of our systems. Not very much vorticity with the system near Texas, so we're not going to worry about this any longer. Julia still has significant spin and energy, but as you saw from the satellite picture, the upper level winds are just too strong to allow those thunderstorms to wrap around the center. And Ian out here is post-tropical, extratropical cyclone kind of wrapped up in a larger weather system, so no need to worry about this anymore at all. And then of course Karl out here has this sort of elongated area where it's stretched out, but this also shows that it's a huge area of influence, and once it bundles that energy and gets away from some of these negative influences out in this area, it could go and become quite a substantial hurricane. It's just a matter of where it ends up. And again, we'll talk about that towards the end of the discussion here. Upper level winds coming right across our system here. Julia, some of these wind barbs in here are in excess of 50, in some cases 55 knots, right over the top of that system, and that's not healthy at all. We know that by now. Off the screen over here, I think it shows up better on the, I guess it didn't put the other shear map, but the upper level winds, as you saw in the satellite picture, moving across the top of Karl, and that has to change, and I think it will as it moves farther to the west. The upper level pattern over here forecast to change, so we'll see. And then the one here over Texas, or approaching Texas anyway, over the Gulf, upper level winds really not favorable there. So what is favorable? Well, the water temperatures certainly are. Out here in the main development region, quite a bit above the long-term average. That's also the case here in the western and southwest Atlantic. Even the North Atlantic up here, way above the long-term average. But look what's happening here in the Pacific. This cold area continues to hang on and try to expand a little bit. Not the La Nina that we thought we might have earlier in the year, but the Atlantic certainly did warm up here all across this region into the Gulf and Caribbean. So very warm compared to where it should be. And here we are past the mid part of September and the mid part of the hurricane season with all this very warm water and all these pieces of energy coming off of Africa. like I said yesterday, it could be just a matter of time that one of them is going to amount to something significant for some location. And remember, not just talking about the United States. That's certainly where most of the people who watch these videos originate, but we have the islands of the Caribbean, our friends in Bermuda over here, and the Canadian Maritimes, as well as Central America. And luckily, we've been fortunate this year with no major impacts from a substantial hurricane. Earl and Hermine notwithstanding, it's been, considering what it could be, a fairly benign season. So let's look at the different tracks here. Julia, very odd, not sure what's going to happen with it. Most of the modeling indicating kind of a milling around or loitering again off the coast and then maybe heading out to sea. But there's some indication that perhaps it'll try to mill around, loiter again, and then maybe move back towards Florida as ridging starts to build in over the eastern United States and the western Atlantic. That would keep it blocked, and then the steering flow would push it back towards Florida. So we need to wait and see if that happens with that strong sort of heart to it, if you will, the vorticity signature. It's not just spinning down into nothing. The lack of deep convection is keeping it from strengthening, thank goodness. But we'll have to wait and see. This is going to be here, unfortunately, for several days, meaning we just, we have to watch it. It's not just going to go away. It's going to be a big nuisance. And then we have Karl. And this is going to be interesting to see. Most of the model guidance here, the reliable tracks, keeping this well to the north and east of the islands over here. So that's great for those folks. Now you see, it does have this sort of bend to the southwest over time as high pressure builds to the north, fairly strong and kind of pushing it down to the south a little bit. How much of that southward bend actually takes place is going to be very important as to where this ends up. And a lot of that has to do with how strong it is. So let's go back to our satellite image here. This sheared sort of naked swirl coming out in front of the convection, the longer this pattern here lasts, the more south track this should take overall. As the high pressure area builds in, it'll basically shove all these low level features down to the south. The trade winds and everything gets sort of pushed to the south. And where it ends up after that part is what will be very important. We have Bermuda sitting over here, of course, the southeast coast of the U.S., and the Bahamas all will be watching this. With it being at this high of a latitude already, odds and logic favor that it will come across and then turn out to sea at some point, maybe in this region. That's what typically would happen, but you never know. Some have made it through over the years, obviously, or there would hardly be any interest in hurricanes if all of them missed. But most of them do miss. That's why we live along the coast the way we do. So this one's going to be interesting. And if I go out and show you the 5-day GFS at the 500 millibar level, so I usually show the 850 chart, but this is a little higher, showing the what we call the 500 millibar steering level. And this shows us your troughs and ridges pretty good, when you're looking to see if there's going to be a hurricane somewhere. Now, interestingly enough, this is Karl represented in the model, not significant at all. The GFS really not doing much with this until later in the forecast period. There's Bermuda right there. And the GFS does not strengthen this until it comes up near Bermuda, and then it just kind of takes off and heads on out to sea. But what I want to show you, this is the 5-day forecast for the 500 millibar field. And what we're not seeing is we don't have a large area of ridging sitting over the Atlantic like this in this pattern. What we call the heights are trying to lower up here over North America and the Northwest Atlantic as this energy tries to dig in and erode what ridging that there is. And you can see that right here, just a slight lowering of the heights, and it thins that ridge out, and that allows this to gain latitude. So we'll have to wait and see how this evolves. Even 5 days out is enough time for things to change. Also notice the GFS has Julia right there back where it started at the 5-day time frame. So it's going to be an interesting few days ahead. A lot can happen, and what we need to look for is, do we get a large area of heights building over the northwest Atlantic like this, with a big ridge of high pressure, allowing this to kind of come in towards the southeast coast, and then maybe a trough comes in and lifts out, leaving this to mill around, and then another ridge builds in. It's just too far out. You can say if and or and maybe all you like, but right now Karl is sitting out here, and it has a long way to go. So there you go. Once again, something to watch, nothing to worry about too much yet. It's the middle of hurricane season. We need to be paying attention to these things anyway, right? Right. All right, have a great weekend ahead. I will be posting video blogs all weekend long, and we'll keep track of what's happening. I think in the next 3 days, we'll get a much better idea. And it goes without saying, yep, we're 3 days closer. But, the pattern will evolve. I think within 72 hours, we'll get an idea. Oh, yeah, this is either definitely going out to sea with maybe a threat to Bermuda, or will the pattern evolve that allows it to gain more longitude and get farther west? I'm talking about Karl, of course. And then we have another system coming off that I'll keep, of Africa, that I'll keep watching this weekend as well. And hopefully I can rest my voice. It sounds kind of raspy today, doesn't it? Yes, it does. Anyway, have a great weekend. I'm Mark Sept with HurricaneTrack.com. As always, I appreciate you tuning in, and I'll be in touch with you throughout the weekend.